humans need the gain to be 2 to 3 times bigger than the thing they lose.
The possible loss, yeah.
Yeah, so if the pain we experience from losing £10 on the floor or $10 on the floor isn't equal to the pleasure we experience from finding 10, we'd have to find 20 or 30 to equal the pain of losing 10. And that speaks, I think, in some part to why people stay in the situation they're in, because for me to go after a better relationship, it better appear to be 2 to 3 times better than the one I'm going to lose.
Interesting.
Or the job, it has to appear to be 2 to 3 times better than the one I'm sacrificing. And that almost keeps us pinned down. I actually did a bit of research a couple of years ago as to why we have loss aversion, like what's the evolutionary basis. And the best answer I could find was that we come from a background of trading with like other apes and stuff. Yeah. And there's often a risk that the person might not trade back, or so we factor that into the trade.
Yeah.
We factor in the probability that it won't be an equal trade.
Yeah.
And life's not an equal trade. We pursue things and we don't get them. And I think that's part of what's holding us in situations that aren't serving us and in the stress you describe.
It's surprising though, if you look back at your life, and you really take a factual view of the history of your life, most of the time when you lost something, you opened up a space that allowed something else to walk in, right? This is the truth of life, right? If you lose a job, that's the only time where you're allowed to actually find another job.
It's a shame hindsight doesn't have the wisdom of foresight.
Because your brain is a survival mechanism. Your brain is constantly ignoring all that you've learned and saying there could be a nuclear war, right? And it's quite interesting when you really think about it, because I always say, if your worst fears have ever happened, you wouldn't be here right now, okay? And by the way, if some of them happened, surprisingly, you're still here. Isn't that interesting, huh? So yes, your worst fear happened and you made it, because you never factor in the reality of how resilient you actually are. And I think that the trick really is also not the fact that we should be a little conservative and concerned about certain things, but how much of our life should we be concerned about? Like if you really rank the things that are important in your life, how many of them actually matter enough so that you don't make the change? 4, 5, right? But we hold on to 200,000 other things. Below the 4 or 5, 200, let's say 2,000. Realistically, for each and every one of us, that, my Hannah, when Hannah came to my home the first time, she looked at my home and she said, "Oh, Hannah is my wife.
Yeah,
I fell in love badly, and again, because I had space in my life." Just remember that.
We're going to talk about that later.
Are we really? Are we going to go talk about Unstressable at all? When she came to my home the first time, she said, "Oh," because she follows my podcasts and she knows my work and so on. She said, "Oh, you're not a minimalist. You're a minimalist wannabe." And I said, "What do you mean?" Because I am reasonably minimalist, right? But she has that attitude to things where she says, "It's only going to come into my life if I truly love it." Truly love it. Like, I have 16 types of tea in my cupboard. Some of them I've never tasted, right? She has 2, but she really loves them, right? And I think that's the trick. The trick is when you rank life, you hold on to that, box of Earl Grey that you bought a year ago, and you're like, "Yeah, I'll drink it one day." Will you really? Right? You hold on to that friend that you met when you were 4, and they changed, you changed, right? But we hold on to those things, and the trick is, can we actually let go of those things? Can we leave the space for other things to come in, or for us to chill and find expansion in our life, right? So I used to have that attitude of trying every Saturday to throw 10 things away from my home, okay? Believe it or not, endlessly you can throw 10 things or give away 10 things from your home. Last Saturday I had this beautiful humidifier, just to make the room a little more humid. Okay, and I was like, should I keep it? Should I throw it away? Should I keep it? Should I throw it away? And then I plugged it in and it didn't work. I haven't used it for like a year and a half. And you have to imagine that so many of those things are there they're bugging you down. They're stressing your life. So if they're not used, they're stressing you. And you can choose to leave them, just leave them behind.
Do you believe that? Do you believe that if you're not using it, even if it's just sat there, that it's stressing you out?
100%. And it's actually, and you're depriving it of the opportunity to live. So think about, I know this is philosophical, but a humidifier is supposed to humidify, right? It's not supposed to sit there and look pretty. If you're not using it, someone else will use it, right? And believe it or not, the simple impact of when they're using it, you save them the need to actually buy another one, right? And in doing that, you might have contributed a tiny bit to our planet. And you know, the hoarding that we have in our lives, the number of things that we keep. I love Arabic incense. And like everything, and you see sometimes silly things like, it's so what? Each of those is like $10. I had like 14 different scents, right? And then I realized, you know what? Anytime I light an incense, I light one. Okay, and when I need to order another one, I'll get it within one day. So when this one is about to finish, and I've really enjoyed it, really loved it, I'll order another one. Limit. You're supposed to constantly limit the number of things in your life. By the way, you may think it's not taking away from your life, but it's taking space. It's taking attention. It's taking the space of something else. It's requiring you to deal with it, clean it, dust it. It's just. Why?
Is this what you refer to in that stress quadrant from Unstressable as noise?
Noise? No. Noise is what happens from within your head.
Okay.
So it's little stressors that you don't, that don't happen in the real world. Okay, it's little stressors that when I'm looking at myself in the mirror, or when I'm driving and thinking about, oh, you messed up on that thing. Right? It's generated. So the ton of stress is very straightforward. It is external and internal, macro and micro. So if you look at stress coming from within you or from outside you, right? Internal and external. And if you look at it coming from a small reason of stress or a big reason of stress. The great example is trauma is macro, external. Macro meaning it's a very, very high stressful impact. Very significant, comes from outside you. We don't cause ourselves trauma. Something else causes us trauma, right?
Mm-hmm.
That trauma, capital T here. Huh? And yeah, so it's noise is micro. It's like that constant nagging in your head, like, you need to, your hair is starting to show white. Like so constant nagging, it's like you're getting old, okay? It's small, it doesn't kill you. But if you say it every day, it starts to become quite significant, which actually is really, I think, the most interesting part of stress is to understand that stress is very good for you, right? Until it kills you. And I think what most people don't understand is that there are only 3 ways where stress will break you. One is trauma outside you, but we said you'll recover very quickly. The other is burnout, and the third is anticipation of stress. Okay? And these 2 are completely within your control. So trauma is outside your control, but 93% will recover in 3 months, 96% will recover in 6 months, and most of us will actually get post-traumatic growth. So post-trauma, you'll be fine. Okay? The majority of how stress kills us is burnout, which is a very large number of small stressors. So the burnout equation, as I wrote it in the book, is the number of stressors multiplied by the intensity of each, multiplied by the time of application of each, multiplied by the frequency of application. So take a commute, for example. If you commute is 1 stressor, multiplied by, if it's a 2 hours commute and it's very annoying and you're surrounded by people, it's very intense. Okay? And if you have to do it twice a day, it's very different than if you do it 4 times a day, okay? And if you have to do it every day, it's very different than if you have to do it once a week. So you add all of those up, the sigma of all of those, when that reaches the breaking point of what you can carry as a human, you'll break, right? And normally you'll break because of a tiny thing, like your best friend goes like, hey, chubby, and you go like, what? I can't take this anymore, and you cannot go out of bed anymore. Previously you would go like, yeah, skinny, whatever. You would just laugh about it. And I think the trick is, is to save yourself from burnout. It's not that one last stressor, right? It is all of the other 400 stressors that piled up, so that when that last one is applied, you break, right? And it is quite interesting because we normally never break because of stress. It's not the event that breaks us. Okay, so one of the interesting topics in Unstressable is of course Alice in her very spiritual, soft, practice approach, wrote her parts of the book, and I was like, Alice, I just still don't get it. And she said, what don't you get? And in my approach, I said, in physics, right, stress is very defined. Stress is very clear in physics, right? An object is stressed when you stress an object, you apply a force to a square area, to the cross section of the object, right? The stress is not just the result of the force. It's not the external stressor, the external challenge or threat that we face that stresses us. It's your square area that also plays in that equation. So basically, our stress as humans, if you apply the same concept of physics, is the intensity of the challenges that you face divided by the skills and resources and the abilities that you have to deal with that stress, right? So the stress equation is your, the challenge divided by the resources, okay? And that's why someone, like you, may be able to carry things that would make someone freak out. It's the reason why someone like me would, laugh about things that made me freak out in my 20s. Right? Not because the event is different, it's because you increased your resources.
So how does someone increase their resources? Because I think everybody listening to this now, either they're that person or they know someone who flaps.
Yeah.
When things get a little bit tricky, they flap.
Yeah. So
and when I'm saying flap, if you don't know what I'm saying, I mean like they panic or they worry or they have like a bit of a meltdown.
But panic and worry is a different topic. We should absolutely cover that.
Okay.
Right? So panic and worry is breaking down under the anticipation of threats.
Yeah.
Okay. But when it comes to dealing with stress, right? I don't know how to say it, but someone at work when I used to be in the corporate world would walk in and say, "Oh, the CEO has changed. We've been working on this deal for the last 9 months and the CEO has changed. Everything has collapsed." And I'm like, no, it hasn't. No, I've done 200 deals in my life where the CEO has changed and you have to rebuild your network and you have to do this and that and so on. I mean, I think the most valuable example I remember in my life is the 2008 crisis. So when I joined Google, my boss, which I really adore at the time, he was so direct and very shrewd. And so the introduction, when I joined the management meeting the first day, is he says, "Hey, everyone, this is Mo. He's bringing the average age of the company up." Right? And I was like, one more sentence, please. Like, please say something else. He didn't. That was it. The introduction is he's bringing the average age of the company up. But when the economic crisis of 2008 happened, Google completely panics. And the older group goes like, it's not the first time. We've seen economic crisis before. It's cyclical. This is what happens. Maybe we should behave this way, right? It's the same event, but you have more resources because you've seen it over and over, right? So it's your accountability as a person to tell yourself that I need to learn the techniques, okay? That I need to understand to be able to manage stress. And the way we wrote them in Unstressable is we said, you get stressed in 4 modalities. You get stressed mentally, get stressed emotionally, physically, or spiritually. Okay? And each of those is a different, I don't know how to say, a different language course. So your mental stress speaks to you and responds to you in a language that is different than your emotional stress. It's different than your physical stress. That's different than your spiritual stress. Okay? But if you learn that language, then you can easily deal with that stress when it happens. Okay? And it's simple techniques. Like, we probably should cover as many of them as we can, but take the simplest thing. Mental stress is the kind of stress that wakes you up at 4 a.m. at night because a thought is running through your head. You can't stop it, right? Simple techniques are, write the thought down, okay? Promise yourself that you're going to think about it in the morning before you go to bed. And most of the time, if you simply let the thought reside on paper, it won't reside in your head. Okay, and keep the promise. So when you wake up the next morning, actually think about that thought that you made the promise to your brain that you will. Simple technique, and there are hundreds of those. Like we have in the mental stress space, for example, we have something we call the GYMM, GYMMMMM. So it's eight different practices, right? And the trick here is learn that technique, apply that technique, and you will be able to deal with stress a little bit better. Okay, and creating a support network, your ability to question your thoughts. I have a technique that I call Meet Becky. The idea that you allow your brain to express things and share them rather than block them, and so on and so forth. Right, and that skill in mental stress is very, very different than emotional stress. Okay, because your brain speaks to you all the time. It rarely ever, if at all ever, tells you the truth. That's the language that your brain speaks. It only tells you what it thinks is the truth. Okay, your emotions speak to you all the time, and it's always the truth, right? So if you're afraid, you're afraid. There's no lying about that. Okay, but the problem is that emotions are so subtle, they're so blended, they're brush strokes of multiple emotions overlaid on each other, and we're told not to acknowledge them at all. So we don't even respond to the language, right? Your body speaks in aches and pains. Okay, why that smile
Yeah,
before you go to
Yeah.
Australia, right? But we ignore it completely. We go like, this is normal. It's normal to have aches and pains. I'm traveling for 16 hours. Must have aches and pains, right? No, you must not. You have aches and pains because you're stressing your body, okay? But if your body is your priority, you're not going to have the aches and pains, right? Your spirit would cry through its intuition. I mean, spirit here is not a religious thing, right? But your non-physical part, call it your consciousness, and the part that doesn't relate to your physical form. Okay, it sends you signals all the time related to your purpose and what you're supposed to be doing through your intuition. How many of us listen to our intuition when we're running through life? And so when these are skills, this is the entire body of the book, the skills of how do you build your resources in terms of spotting by listening to the language that the modality speaks to you, spotting that you're being stressed, and then how do you actually speak back to it and deal with it with the resources that you need so that you're not that stressed anymore.
How do we know? How do we spot our own stress? Because it's hard, isn't it, when we've told ourselves a different story about the feeling or that sensation. We tell ourselves different stories about it. We say, this ache or pain is good because it means growth, or this burnout or this anxiety is good because it means, productivity. But how do we truly know that we've pushed ourselves too far?
And I think the easiest one to recognize, believe it or not, is physical stress, right? Physical stress is undeniable. It is when you have a sore throat, you know something's wrong.
Yeah.
And you tell yourself something's wrong. Okay? When you have back pain, you know something's wrong.
Yeah.
But you don't tell yourself something's wrong. Okay? And the symptoms of physical stress are very straightforward. Digestive issues, headaches, you're unable to sleep very well, you're unable to rest when you sleep, and so on. So it's very simple. Your body, theoretically, is a machine that should work seamlessly. Okay? Unless there is a disease or an illness or whatever, it should work seamlessly. It should simply be like a luxury car. You run it and it runs. Right? If it starts to shake and it's not performing well, you have to stop and say, what is going on? And every stress will give you a slightly different physical signature. Right? Anxiety is felt in your stomach. Right? Fear is all over your body. You just want to run. You feel that, like you can feel it. The trick is, how do you get embodied? How do you allow yourself to sit with your body and say, so, Alice writes about a very normal practice is a body scan. And so few of us do it. On a long flight, you should sit with your body and go like, okay, close your eyes, take a deep breath and scan your body from your top of your head all the way to your toes and see where it hurts, right? And ask yourself, how much more effective in your mission would you be if it doesn't hurt?
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.